So let's continue. So for linear regression, first thing is all these formulas are given in your table book, page number 24. So you don't have to remember any of these, you just have to just look for it, except for this one formula, that is our distribution of variance. Okay, so distribution of variance is going to be nothing but our n minus 2 sigma hat square by sigma square follows chi square n minus 2. Okay. Just because here we have studied such formulas, n minus 1 s square by sigma square follows chi square n minus 1. Here we had degree of freedom n minus 1 because we assume that our mean, our x bar is equal to our mean mu. That is why we have one less degree of freedom. Now when we have two parameters, we assume two such values. We'll have that x bar is equals to mu x and y bar is equals to mu y, and that is why, okay, again, okay, so we assume y bar is equals to mu y as well as x bar is equals to mu x. That is why we will have 2 degrees of freedom less than usual. Okay, so therefore our formula becomes n minus 2 sigma hat square by sigma square following chi square n minus 2. Okay, so this is the only formula that is not given in your table book that we require sometimes if they ask us about variance. Otherwise all other things are given in our table book. Now for linear regression, let's see a question. In a study of relation between the amount of information available and the use of buses in 8 comparable test cities, bus route maps were given to the residents of the cities at the beginning of the test period. The increase in average daily bus use during the test period was recorded. The number of maps and the increase in bus use are given in the table below. Okay. They are first saying construct a scatter plot diagram of the data and comment on the relationship between the increase of the bus use. So they may ask you scatter plot diagram, although the chances are very less, but if they do, we should know how to make a scatter plot diagram. Okay, so okay, I'll just make it here. Just go to insert, and in insert you will have chart. Okay, so this is a chart, insert chart, and in type of chart you will have scatter, xy scatter. Okay. For scatter plot you just need this dot one. If you want to join and check, this is the other that will show you trends as well, but whenever they say scatter plot diagram, we just want points. So this is the one that you would choose. Press OK. So this is our scatter plot diagram. Okay. Label them correctly. Okay, number of maps and increase in bus use. So we are talking about okay, and then just write down your values. Now see, if you want to show trends as well, then keep x values as in ascending order. These are not in ascending order, these are randomly taken into account. But if you want to show trends, then you will have to take them as ascending values. Okay, I'm not showing any trends, so that is why I can take these random values. I may have missed a value somewhere. I'll just check. Okay, I have started from one below. Okay, so these are our values x and y. Now if you want to take all of them into consideration, this is the point that you have to see these, whatever you see purple and blue, they should be on all values, so you will see the graph here. Okay, now here if you want to have x-axis and y-axis label as well, just go to plus sign and you will have axis titles. Axis title primary, horizontal, axis title both, then write those axis titles. Okay, and then if you want your limits to be correct, one thing you can do is just double click on the horizontal axis. Okay, then you will get this format axis option. In this format axis you will have different options. Okay, chart area, chart type, horizontal axis values and stuff. We'll go to horizontal value axis. This is our axis option, and in minimum rather than 0 I would take 50 because that is much more closer. Okay, and for maximum I think 230 is good enough because 220 is our maximum value. Okay, so this is good enough. You can change your axis values here. So this becomes a scatter plot diagram. Okay, now what can you say? You would say there is a positive relationship between increase in bus use and number of whatever number of maps distributed, but it seems to be slightly curved. Okay, so that would be your observation from this. And they are saying the equation of the fitted linear regression is given by this. You know how to find if they do not give you. This is our alpha, this is our beta. Formulas are given to us. Perform an appropriate statistical test to assess that the hypothesis that the slope in the fitted model suggests no relationship. Now, there can be two questions here. Either they would say slope of the fitted model suggests relationship or no relationship. Second would be that we will be testing using our correlation coefficient, that would be our R. So depending on the question, here they are saying slope, so clearly we have to test for beta. So if you are testing for beta, then this is the distribution that we will be using, or test statistic that we will be using. If they asked us to test for the coefficient, then we will be using this. This will be used when we are assuming that our rho is equal to 0 and not equal to 0. Okay, we are checking for rho equal to 0, then we will be using this. If we are testing for a specific rho, if they are asking you to check whether rho is equals to 0.5, rho is equals to 0.9, 10, whatever, okay, 0.91, or for any value other than 0, you would be using this test statistic. This is nothing but our Fisher's Z transformation. Okay, This can be used for 0 as well, but this is just easier to use. That is why for 0 we use this one. Okay. Here they have said to check for slope parameter. That is why this is our slope parameter. We'll be using this distribution. So this is the scatter plot diagram. Then you'll have to calculate our standard error. Standard error is going to be sigma hat square by sxx. So you'll have to calculate sigma hat square. Sigma hat square is also given in your table book. Okay, you have your syy, sxy and sxx. Using that you will be calculating sigma hat square. Okay, sigma hat square, and that becomes your standard error. So your test statistics, where beta is equal to 0 versus beta not equal to 0. Test statistic is this. Just find the p-value. Okay, you can see it will be tn minus 2. Tn minus 2. Using that you can just calculate. Degree of freedom is tn minus 2. Just calculate the p-value. For not equal to, it will just be p-value 2 times t6 greater than 6.484. T distribution, degree of freedom 6. We are looking for 6.484. So clearly it is beyond 0.05%. So you'll say your p-value is less than 0.05%. So you'll say even at 0.05% we have enough evidence to reject our H0. Therefore our slope parameter is not 0, or beta is not equal to 0. So there is strong evidence against H0. We conclude that a straight line representation of the relationship between increase in bus use and number of maps distributed will have non-zero slope. Okay, so this is very straightforward. Now this is the part that I really want to concentrate on. The fitted response and the residual from the linear regression model fitted in part 2 are given below. So you can use again the scatter plot to plot these. Okay. So I'll say insert chart, again scatter. Okay, fitted versus residual. Okay, and just write the values. So I'll just skip it right now. Okay, and we'll see how they are asking us plot the residuals against the value of the fitted response and comment on the adequate. So residuals will be our y-axis and fitted will be our x-axis. So this is how you will see the chart to be. This is our 0 point. So the values that are lower are negative, values that are higher are positive values. Whenever you have such values of residual versus fitted, where at the beginning you have one-sided values and at the end you have the same sided values, and in the middle you get these kind of values. Okay, so we have negative, positive, negative, or positive, negative, positive. These kind of values, that just shows that our data is curved. It is not a very good representation of straight line. Okay, so our data is going to be curved data. That is what this represents. Okay, so you can see here negative residual are associated with the fitted values at the two ends of the data set, suggesting that the model is inadequate. Pattern suggests that the quadratic model or a curved model, you can use the word curved model or you can use the word quadratic model, might be appropriate. Okay. Now that does not mean this is a bad fit. You can actually calculate your fit of the model. Now fit of the model is nothing but r square written in percentage form. So if you calculate r and calculate r square, let's do that. Okay, you know our r is going to be sxy upon sxx sxy under root. So I'll calculate that. So r is equals to 0.935468. If I square this, we'll get r square, that we call it as coefficient of determination. Okay, or you can also call it as fit of the model. We write it in terms of percentage, so it will be 87.5%. So this just tells us that 87.5% of the data is very well represented by this linear model. So 87.5% is a very good representation. It's not a bad model. It just extreme values are not very well represented. Okay, so this is our graph. Most likely our line would go something like this. Okay, so this tells us that at least these values are very well represented by our line. Okay, but extreme values like these and these will not be very well represented. Okay, so if you are trying to predict any value in the future, like let's say for 250, the problem would be that the line would suggest the value to be somewhere here, but the curve, you can see the curve, it is going in this direction, so you will have a big error. Okay, so finding regression values for higher extreme values is not a very good thing to do when we have a curve representation rather than a linear representation. I think that is part of this question. Okay, a new city added 250,000 maps are distributed to this cities to the cities, and calculate the prediction of the increase in the bus use in this city according to the model fitted in part 2. Now see, because we are talking about single value, we are talking about single value prediction. We are not talking about mean representation. What just happened? Okay, so here we'll be using predicted individual response, expected value of y hat, that would be nothing but alpha plus beta x0. We do not have the exact value, so we will be taking our estimated values of alpha and beta. So this is the predicted. Okay, this uses extrapolation. That means we are trying to find an extreme value on the fitted regression line. The prediction is probably not valid, especially as the linear model does not seem adequate, because we said curved model is more adequate. So finding extreme values is not going to be a very good answer. The error will be high. Okay. So these are the typical type of sums from linear regression. Next talk about GLM, generalized linear model. In a generalized linear model, we have three parts. Whenever we are talking about generalized linear model, we have three parts. The first one being the distribution of response. Then we have linear predictor that we call as eta, and then we have link function. That is going to be our G mu is equals to eta. G becomes nothing but our linear link function. Okay. Here mu is nothing but our expected value of y. So we usually take into account exponential family for generalized linear model. We can take a lot of different families or a lot of different distributions, but we are concentrating only on 4 distributions in this particular chapter. Okay, that would be binomial, Poisson, normal and gamma. Now there is a typical type of question where they ask you to prove whether these distributions are exponential family distribution or not. That I am not going to cover. That is a simple 4 different proofs. Okay. Now whenever you are looking at exponential family, this is the pattern of your f of y, and your expected value must be b dash theta, variance must be a phi b double dash theta, where theta is nothing but the natural parameter, phi is called as scale parameter, and b double dash theta is called as variance function. Okay. So you have direct questions about define natural parameter, or find natural parameter, scale parameter, variance function of a particular whatever f of y. Okay. Now we have something called as canonical link function. These are the generalized link function given to us for a particular distribution. These are suggestions, not written in stone. These are suggestions to us that if no other link function is given to us, then take these link functions. Okay. So otherwise, if there is a link function given to us in the book, in the question, then we should take that link function over this canonical link function. Okay. Then for a model, it's going to be important to find the parameters of a model. There's a basic rule that first of all, a constant model will have one parameter. Now if we add a variable or a factor to the model, then we are adding n-1 parameters. When we add an interaction, that is going to be nothing but x and y, x dot y. Interaction between two variables, if we add that, then we are adding m-1 into n-1 parameters. And for any star model, we will have, if I have x star y, then we will have m into n parameters. And star model will always have maximum number of parameters in that particular kind of system. Okay. Then we have something called as scale deviance. That is what we calculate. Scale deviance is going to be nothing but 2 times log likelihood of the saturated model minus log likelihood of our current model. That would become nothing but the scale deviance. Using scale deviance, we can predict whether it is a good model or not, or we can also check which model is better in that case. So if you have two models where we have taken change as model 1 minus model 2, then change in standard deviation becomes our test statistic for chi-square distribution with parameter change in degree of freedom. Now how do we calculate degree of freedom? Degree of freedom will always be maximum parameters minus parameters of the model. How do we get maximum parameters? Maximum parameters we'll always get by the star model. So if we have three variables, my maximum number of parameters will be m into n into whatever p, okay, number of parameters of each one of them. So if let's say all three were factors in which one had 3 parameters, the other had 4 parameters, the next had 5 parameters, so the star model will consist of 60 parameters, 3 into 4 into 5. Okay, so we have simple questions about finding which model is better when they have given a scale deviance. You will be using this relationship to find whether this model 1 is better than model 2 or model 2 is better than model 1. Okay. Pearson's residual, they just ask you to calculate Pearson's residual for a particular distribution. Okay, so always remember Pearson's residual would look like this. This is good for normal distribution, but it is not very good for skewed distribution. And all three other distributions, binomial, Poisson and gamma, are skewed distribution. Binomial can be symmetric, so maybe good enough for binomial, but for Poisson and for gamma, Pearson's residual is not a very good representation of the residual values. So although we can find it, it will not be very good value. Okay, so the other is deviance residual. Deviance residual is nothing but sine of y minus yi minus mu, okay, mu hat. That would be sine. That just means that you have to take this particular value, whatever your y, and minus your actual estimated value. You just need the sign, whether it is positive or negative, multiplied by di. Okay, multiplied by di, where di is nothing but summation of di square. Okay, summation of di square is the scale deviance of the model, the scale deviance that we calculated. Okay, so you just have to calculate the, what do we say, the contribution of that particular value to the scale deviance. That becomes nothing but your di square. That would root that value and you will get di. Okay. These are just formulas that you have to take into account whenever you are solving generalized linear model questions. A generalized linear model, it's just easier to solve in R, to understand in R, because we have a lot of things that we can use or see represented in R. But definitely we will have some questions in our regular, what do we say, paper A. Okay, so for GLM, here we have an annual number of claims. Now here what we have to do is find the maximum likelihood estimate of mu1. So first of all, maximum likelihood estimate is going to be the most difficult question in the GLM part. Okay, maximum likelihood and maybe the scale deviance questions. Okay, so maximum likelihood, how do we calculate maximum likelihood of an GLM question? So annual number of claims on 3 different types of insurance policy follow a Poisson distribution with the parameter mu1, mu I, where I is 1 to 3. Data for the last 4 years is given in the table below. So we have type 1, type 2, type 3. So these are the possible values. They have given us total as well. Total 11 values, 16 values, and so on. Okay. So likelihood, how do we calculate likelihood? Likelihood the same way. This is nothing but log likelihood. No, I think this is just likelihood. Then for log likelihood they have taken like this. So we usually write capital L for likelihood. That would be our pi of probabilities f of x, or probability x is equals to x, right? For Poisson distribution, that is going to be e raised to minus lambda, okay, lambda raised to our x, okay, xi, or in this case we usually write y, so I'll just write yi upon, we will have yi factorial. Okay, this is going to be our likelihood. So we are checking only for the first one. Okay, so we would say pi, our parameter is mu I, so I will say this is nothing but e raised to n times mu 1 and lambda raised to summation yi upon, we don't actually need this, so you can skip writing this, you can just write proportional to these two values, and this is nothing but summation, that would be 11, and n is number of values are 4 years. Okay, so therefore we'll get proportional to e raised to minus 4 mu 1, and this is also mu 1 raised to 11. Okay. Then take log on both sides, this is what we are going to get, differentiate and equate it to 0, and you will get your mu hat 1 is equals to 2.75. Similarly, you can find mu hat 2 and mu hat 3. Your mu hat 1 became nothing but summation yi upon n, so mu hat 2 will also be the same, that would be 16 by 4, and mu hat 3 would be 20 by 4, 16 by 4 and 20 by 4. Now assuming that they are all equal, that means, see in here they are saying test the hypothesis that these are equal using scale deviance. Okay, so we have to test whether all three are equal or not. So if we assume all three are equal, that means this whole data 12 values are for the same parameter mu. So we'll say for mu hat, our parameter is going to be total values, that would be addition of all these three divided by total values here, that would be 12. So we have upon 12, and here we have 11 plus 16 plus 20. This becomes nothing but mu hat. Okay, so that ways you can calculate a model that has a single mu, okay, single mu hat, that is this one, or you have another model where we have 3 different mu hats. So you can calculate the scale deviance. We know scale deviance is nothing but 2 times our L of S saturated model, log likelihood of saturated model, minus log likelihood of model. This is our SD1. So if I'll have model 1, okay, and similarly if I want to calculate SD2, or if I just want to calculate change in our SD, that would be SD1 minus SD2, because they are basically representations of the same model. Their saturated model will be same, log likelihood of saturated would be same, so therefore that cancels out, and you will get this as 2 times likelihood of model 2 minus likelihood of model 1. Okay, So that is what they have done. This is our model 2 minus model 1. Okay, so the log likelihood was this. Okay, this is our log likelihood. Use that here. Logarithms of factorials will cancel each other out. Okay, you can actually try and you will get that they will cancel each other out. Okay, and therefore this becomes nothing but change in scale deviance. What about change in degree of freedom? Change in degree of freedom is always minus of change in parameters. So even though we do not know how many would be the maximum number of parameters, we can find change in degree of freedom. Change in degree of freedom is just minus of change in parameters. Now our model 2 had 3 parameters. Model 1 had only one parameter, that was mu. So therefore the change in parameters would be minus 2, and therefore change in degree of freedom becomes 2. Change in degree of freedom is 2. So therefore our degree of freedom is nothing but 2. Okay. So now we have change in SD, we have change in degree of freedom. Okay. If your p-value, you calculate the p-value with this, you will have chi-square change in degree of freedom greater than change in scale deviance. This is how you will calculate your p-value. If p-value is greater, then your model 2 is better than model 1. If p-value is less than 5%, usually we compare it to 5%. Okay, if your p-value is less than 5%, then your model 1 is better than model 2. In this case, most likely p-value is less than 5%. Let's see. Degree of freedom 2 for this 2.66. You can see 2.66 is going to be between 30% and 20%. Okay, so 2.66 is going to be between 30% and 20%. So p value is 30% less than p value less than 30% greater than 20%. Okay, so p value is between 30% and 20%. So therefore you would say that there is no evidence to suggest that the underlying parameters are different, because this our model 1 is better than our model 2. Okay, so therefore mu seems to be better than having 3 different mu's. Okay, any problem here? This is a typical type of sum that you would see when we talk about our GLM type of a question. I don't know whether they would give you that prove Poisson distribution is part of an exponential family or not. I'm not very sure, because that is a proof, and it does not seem like they would give you a lot of proof, but they can. Okay, so you should be ready for those kind of questions. Let's talk about Bayesian statistics. In Bayesian statistics, usually we do not get Bayesian statistics question on itself. We usually get Bayesian statistics and credibility theory questions together. Okay. So in Bayesian statistics, the first thing is finding posterior distributions. Finding posterior distributions are important. Okay. When prior and posterior distribution belong to the same family, then prior distribution is called as conjugate prior distribution. That is something that you should remember. Then we have loss functions. We have square error loss function, we have absolute error loss function, and we have all nothing loss function or 0 or 1 loss function. This is also called as quadratic loss function. This is also called as 0 or 1 loss function. Okay, so we have an estimate. Proofs of these are also important. I'm not sure whether they will ask or not, but definitely they are important. So the estimate, the best estimate that we can get so that we can minimize our error, is going to be mean of our posterior distribution. In this case, it's going to be median of our posterior distribution, and here it is going to be mod of our posterior distribution. Then we have credibility theory, where we say the factor that we should take, the factor that we should take must be in form of z of x bar plus 1 minus z of mu. That just says that if we have a small sample with us and we have overall population value, then we should give a credibility of z. So this becomes nothing but our credibility factor. Credibility factor of z to our sample and 1 minus z to our to overall population. Now, how do we find what is our credibility factor? That comes out to be the whole chapter, right? So we'll see some question. So Bayesian statistics and credibility theory question. Now here, the number of X of claims on a given insurance policy over 1 year has probability distribution this. Okay. I think I have written it incorrectly. It should be theta raised to k. Okay. Theta raised to k into 1 minus theta. Okay. Similar to geometric distribution, it's slightly different. Okay. But it should be theta raised to k, where theta is the unknown parameter between 0 and 1. Independent observations x1 to xn are available for the number of claims in the previous n years. Prior belief about theta are described by the distribution this. So this is our prior belief, similar to something called, like beta distribution. Okay. Then they are asking us derive the maximum likelihood of estimate of theta hat of the given data x1 to xn. This is our MLE question. It's going to be straightforward. Likelihood, okay, log likelihood, differentiate, equate to 0, find your estimate value. Okay, so we are getting summation x upon n plus summation x as our theta hat. And derive the posterior distribution of theta given that the given data this. So for posterior distribution, we'll just say our posterior will follow our likelihood into prior. Okay. So that ways this becomes nothing but our likelihood equation. This is our prior. So we are literally getting theta raised to alpha plus summation x minus 1 and 1 minus theta raised to n plus alpha minus 1. So this is nothing but beta distribution. So we'll say our theta given sample of x will follow beta distribution with parameters alpha plus summation x comma n plus alpha. Now derive the Bayesian estimate of theta under the quadratic laws and show that it takes the form of credibility estimate this, where mu is the quantity you should specify from the prior distribution. So we want to derive Bayes estimate under quadratic loss function. So under quadratic loss, it's just mean of theta given sample of x. Mean for beta distribution is nothing but alpha upon alpha plus beta. So we'll use that. First of all, for prior, they have also calculated the mean. And then for under Bayesian loss function, again alpha upon alpha plus beta. Now whenever you are splitting these values in terms of your this term, first you should know what are the values you need to split it into. So first of all, we have our prior belief. Prior belief is going to be mu. Prior belief is half, so that is our mu. Okay. And our sample is going to be nothing but summation x by n. So whenever this theta hat is going to be, no, in this case our theta hat was not x by n. Yeah, theta hat was summation x by n plus summation x. Okay. So we'll split it in such way that first of all this summation x would go in our theta hat and the other value would go in our mu. So for that, what you will do is split it in such a way, summation x and this. Okay. And your denominator, give denominator, okay, this. This is one and this is the other. And give denominator common to both. See, this is the denominator, this is the denominator common to both. Then we want to figure out how to complete this theta hat. Theta had summation x plus n in the denominator. So just multiply and divide. You can see multiply and divide by the same value. This becomes our theta hat. Then we wanted mu as half. So if you want half, divide by 2, multiply by 2. So that ways you get your mu. So this term becomes z. This term becomes 1 minus z. You can check that. So here you would say your credibility factor z is going to be this. Now if you want to check whether it is a good credibility factor or not, so if n increases, okay, if sample size increases, then your z should increase. That is always going to be the first thing you would check. Okay. So for that you would divide the whole factor by n and you will get, I think, x bar plus 1 upon 2 alpha by n plus x bar. Here if I increase my value of n, my denominator decreases. If denominator decreases, then the numerator or z increases. So clearly as n increases, z increases. So here they have said as n increases, z tend towards 1 and the Bayes estimate approaches the maximum likelihood estimate as more credibility is put on the data and less on the prior estimate. So these are the typical type of sums that we get from our Bayes estimate. Now there is one sum that I always like to say is an important sum of Bayesian statistic question, and that is this. The number of claims n in a year on a portfolio of insurance policies has a Poisson distribution with parameter lambda. The claims are either large with probability p or small with probability 1 minus p. Independent of one another. Suppose we observe r large claims. Show that the conditional distribution of n minus r given r is Poisson and find its mean. Now here n minus r is small claims and r is large claims. So first thing we are going to do is we need to find probability that my n minus r claims will be some particular value case, any value. So they have taken k here. Given that r we have big claims. Okay. So r we have big claims. So here they are saying probability that total values of n is equals to r plus k, where of those total claims r plus k, we are having k small claims, given that we are having r big claims. So first we have to figure out what is the probability of r big claims. Probability of r big claims we'll be adding up all values of our Poisson distribution. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Okay, what are this? The number of n follows an insurance policies has a Poisson distribution with the parameter lambda. Claims are either large with probability p or claims are small with probability 1 minus p. Okay. So see, probability of r big claims, whenever we say probability that we have r big claims, okay, we are going to have n minus r small claims. Okay, so that just means that first of all n follows Poisson distribution. Okay, so first of all our n should start from, you can say, r values. So I'd say that my values, this is nothing but probability that n is greater or equal to r and we have r big claims. So therefore we will say probability that n is greater or equal to r. So it will be all such probabilities we will be adding up from our n being r to infinity, because Poisson distribution goes from r to infinity. Probability that n is equals to that value n that we are talking about here, into, we want r to be big claims. So if r we have big claims, probability being p raised to r, then we will have 1 minus p probability of small claims, that would be n minus r. So that gives us nothing but summation n is equals to r to infinity, probability of Poisson distribution, that would be e raised to minus lambda, lambda raised to n upon n factorial. Okay, now see, okay, this is going to be nothing but sort of binomial distribution. Okay, so you can say binomial that out of n claims we want r, probability x is equals to r, given n is equals to given n comma p as our binomial distribution value. So we'll have n factorial upon r factorial n minus r factorial p raised to r 1 minus p raised to n minus r. So n factorial cancels out. We are left with I will say r. If I take another variable, like here they have taken j, if I say j is nothing but n minus r, so therefore j is going from 0 to infinity in this case. Like see here, j is going from 0 to infinity, e raised to minus lambda and then lambda raised to r plus j upon r factorial j factorial and p raised to r 1 minus p raised to j. So that ways you can take all of your r values out. So lambda raised to r out, r factorial, p raised to r out. Even you can take e raised to minus lambda out, but they have left it in because they want to show that this is nothing but a Poisson distribution. Okay. So you can see it is a Poisson distribution. This part is nothing but our exponential series, because when you put j value you will get 1 plus lambda 1 minus p plus lambda 1 minus p whole square by 2 factorial and so on. This will go on forever. So that is nothing but exponential series. So you get this value. If you substitute, you will get lambda raised to r, rather lambda p raised to r by r factorial into e raised to minus lambda p. So that shows that r is nothing but a Poisson distribution. Okay. Although that was not asked, but you can write that as well. Okay. Then we are trying to find probability that n minus r is equals to k given r is big claims. Okay. So similar to what we did for the big claims, we'll do for the small claims as well. Okay. Or you can say this is going to be our numerator, that we have r big claims and k small claims. So therefore this becomes our numerator divided by probability of r big claims, that would be this. And if you cancel everything out, you will get something like this. That means n minus r, that is small claims, will also follow n minus r will follow Poisson distribution with lambda 1 minus p. So Bayesian statistics question when we have discrete distributions, and Bayesian statistics question when we have continuous questions. These were continuous distributions. Okay. Other than this, you will have EBCT. I don't think I have. For EBCT, you will have to make tables. So in your Word, just make tables. For EBCT, I have not made any formulas, just because all you have to do is see your formula table book. Page number 29 and page number 30. You have everything here and there is not much to explain, right? For EBCT, you just have to use these formulas. You do not need to write the formulas, just use these formulas and make the table. So I will take an example of model 2, EBCT model 2. Here we are saying that the table below shows the aggregate claim amount for an international insurers fire portfolio for a period of 5 years together with some summary statistics. Okay. So we have 4 different countries and we have 5 years values. The volume of the business of each country for the insurer are as follows. These are the volumes. So that means they have given us P values as well. Okay. Calculate the credibility premium for each country in 6th year using EBCT model 2. So what happens is this 6th year data, that is this data is only used at the end. So while doing all the calculations, you will not be using this 6 year data. So you will be taking 5 year data this and 5 year data this. Okay. 6th year data would only be used at the end. So first of all, our PIJ, this is our PIJ. PIJ 5 year data. For that you need to calculate your P stars. Okay. Table book, you can see EBCT model 2. These are the intermediate calculations that you will have to do beforehand. So first you will have to calculate your P star, you will have to calculate your P bar I and P bar. So you can see this is our P bar I's and this is going to be our P bar. This is sum for P star. Okay, instead of writing what the formula is, I have written it is sum for P star. So sum for P star would be this. This is what I am calculating there, and then divide by this value. Capital N is going to be the number of countries and small n is going to be the number of years. So that ways we get our P star. You do not have to write the formulas. You can specify the formulas taken from table, table book, page number 30. You can write that at the beginning. Then our Xij table. In our Xij table, Xij is nothing but it is going to be Yij divided by Pij, right? Xij is nothing but Yij divided by Pij. Then calculate X bar i's, calculate X bar. So calculated Xij in all of these, calculated X bar i's, calculated X bar, then calculated expected value of S square theta, calculate variance of M theta. Again, formulas are all given here, right? Listen this. Then calculate credibility factor for each of these terms. So I have made another table for it. Zi, that is our credibility factor, that would be this. Credibility premium, that is going to be our phi, is going to be this. Phi is nothing but our I think they have given up. Anyways, we know what our phi is. Phi is nothing but our z into x bar plus 1 minus z into mu. Okay, where mu we take as our E of M theta. Okay. So that becomes nothing but our credibility factor. Then this P of 6 year, Pi of 6 year, we have taken that and just multiply that to your phi, and that gives you nothing but yi6. Very rarely they give questions of credibility, empirical credibility theorem. Okay, but that does not mean that they would not. So most likely in 4 or 5 years they give 4 or 5 papers, they give one question of this. So do not expect that they will or they will not give. Just solve a few questions, try to make it directly in the table. It will not, it is not difficult, it's just lengthy. So what happens is, in the examination, if you feel like you do not have enough time, this is the question that you should solve last, because it will not take a lot of efforts, but it will take a lot of time to solve that. Okay, so always remember your phi would be equal to z into x bar plus 1 minus z into expected value of m theta, and your y I for the next year, like in 6, it would be nothing but pi 6 into phi of different I, because we'll have different z's. Phi, so this gives you nothing but your value for next year. Any problem here? Usually these chapters, the questions that you would see would be definitely from hypothesis testing, linear regression, GLM, and Bayesian statistics plus credibility theory. Okay, these are then you will have point estimation. Okay, that will also be a chapter from which you would see a question. Okay, so these are the big chapters from which you would get big questions. That means 8 marks and above. Then smaller question you can expect from the other chapters. Okay, so usually what happens is, these are the chapters you should concentrate the most on and make sure that you solve them first. Always solve your question paper from the back. That means you will solve the bigger questions first and then solve the smaller questions, because at the beginning you have much more capacity to understand bigger question and solve them faster. Later on what happens is, we are fighting with time as well as fighting with the brain gets stuck. Okay, so later on the smaller questions are much easier to solve. So always solve your paper such that you are solving it from behind. But because you are writing in Word, you do not have to write the sequence in a different order. Don't solve question 10, then question 9, and then question 8. Don't do it like that. Do one thing at the beginning, just write question 1, question 2, question 3, and at the beginning of the paper, one thing you should do is, like, let's say this is the starting of your paper. Just write question 1, then in insert go for page break, then write question 2, page break, question 3, page break, question 4, page break, and so on. Do that for all the questions, 10 questions or 11 questions. Okay, and then start from the bottom and always start a new question on a new page. We can do that, so always do that in your Word file. Okay, so always start a new question on a new page. So at the beginning, just start making list of such questions and then later on solve it from bottom to up. Okay, so I don't see any other doubts. So we'll end our session here. You can contact me on WhatsApp and ask your doubts as well later on. Okay, so we'll end our session here, and tomorrow we'll meet for R programming. Bye.